Right, we are live. Charles, hello.
Hello again.
How are you doing?
Welcome, all right.
Welcome to the Mental Stealth podcast, everybody. It's nice to be back.
Happy you all back. Yeah, wonderful.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I love this. I get excited about these days.
I know, me too. I look forward to them. We can kind of really lay into stuff. And today we are laying into facts versus feelings, aren't we, Charles? So people seem to be moving the goalposts of agreed fact, even agreed definitions that have been around forever, are suddenly being manipulated and moved to suit an agenda because it seems to be more tolerable to deal with mental health in that way. People seem to think that that's the option. We're not going to deal with the leak by fixing the pipe. We're just going to put a bucket underneath and hope it doesn't fill up too quickly before we need to go and get the next bucket. That seems to be and the irony is these buckets have holes in them, so actually not much is being done.
I'm trying to, at 58, having not this being so unfamiliar to me.
Yeah.
And my belief systems, and not only that, but my upbringing and common sense as well, to a large extent.
Yes.
I have to be sometimes quite. I don't withdraw. I don't hold back necessarily, but I have to modify what I would say for what I should say, and try to make my point succinctly but respectfully to those who are clearly most of the time delusional.
Yes.
Or deluded. I never know which word to use, but yeah.
Either one.
Yeah. It's mind blowing, isn't it?
It's really mind blowing. We were talking about an interaction we had where someone had put something up on Instagram saying, "Oh, recovery is what you make of it," and I kind of looked at that and I thought, okay, so let's put that in perspective of someone reading that, someone with anxiety reading that. Let's say that this is someone who's having 10 panic attacks a day. And, they maybe go and do a bit of therapy, and maybe they, for some reason, some miracle, they manage to get their panic attacks down to 8 panic attacks a day. That's recovery now, is it?
Clearly.
Apparently that's recovery because because apparently, Charles, now you can choose what level of recovery you feel. It's no longer just, when you type in the definition of recovery, it means a return to normal. But but no longer, because apparently now recovery is what you make it to be.
Yeah, but hasn't all this come, Sam, from things like, for example, on the NHS website, it used to read that their definition of recovery in terms of the use of their therapeutic interventions. I think their definition used to read something like reaching a point, if you could find it, by the way.
Right.
Because, obviously everything's evidence-based and the gold standard. So your expectations are that they're going to cure you in a second,
Of course.
regardless.
Why wouldn't they?
So when I did some research, I found that their definition was something like reaching a point at which anxiety doesn't affect your general life. In other words, you get to the point where you have to tolerate it because it's always going to be there as far as they're concerned. And so you modify your existence around it so that it's tolerable. That's not recovery. My definition of recovery is lack of the condition, complete removal.
Complete normality.
Yeah. Back to what is normal for you,
Yeah, well,
we're all built differently. Yeah. But
the starting point.
Yeah. You don't recover from a cold and retain a sore throat and a snotty nose. Recover from the cold and all of your symptoms go. That's what recovery is, surely. But they are redefining it. They are definitely we've seen it a lot this last 6 years, to be honest. The redefinition of things.
I find that we have, I find it a dangerous rhetoric to put out to someone because you're facilitating suffering. You're giving someone because actually there is when I was suffering, there is that feeling of you want to do as little as possible to get better because the idea of having to do a lot is so overwhelming and fear-inducing. And so I think if someone comes along and goes, well, recovery is what you make of it, someone's going to read that and go, well, I've done a little bit of this and I feel a little bit better. And because so-and-so tells me that recovery is what I make of it, well, I'm just going to say I'm recovered, even though you still feel horrendous. So, yeah, like I said, you've gone from 10 panic attacks a day to 8 panic attacks a day.
Mm.
Okay, yeah, sure, you might feel a bit. You're still having 8 panic attacks a day.
Mm.
That's
Mm.
still
Mm.
that's still not a life worth living.
But the thing is, I mean, like, we had this discussion earlier again about social media, because, I mean, bloody social media, it's full of people that are just, they're experts in their own kitchen,
Of course they
and
are.
it's shocking that, the thing is, if you instill into somebody, whether you're the NHS or a practitioner of some sort, that you can't recover and won't recover, and then you have social media saying, redefining recovery and saying, I've got OCD, but I'm recovered. But when when I experience intrusive thoughts and anxiety, I do this. And you go, well, like me and you, we'd sit here and say, well, hold on, you just said you're recovered. And now you're saying that you still experience intrusive thoughts and obsessions and compulsions and panic attacks. So you're not recovered. But it's because they convince people, because there's so little expectation. Because, I mean, when I say to people, no, if you come to us, we get you completely free of your anxiety, panic attacks, agoraphobia, phobias, obsessions, health anxiety. You tell me what it is, any intrusive thoughts, any form of anxiety condition, it will be gone. Therefore, you will be recovered.
Yeah, 100% recovery.
Not you will reach a point at which you accept it into your life and exist alongside it, because that's, but because nothing has efficacy other than what we do, of course. Which, look, I'm not trying to sell what we do. I'm trying to give people hope. But when
Yes.
you know recovery is possible and you've seen it tens of thousands of times, and you're being told not to say that, it's disgusting. I was told off today by somebody, a 4-year-old, on, Ticogram or whatever it's called, and I was, I know exactly what it's called. You know that.
No, you do.
But there was this child, a man child, telling me that I hadn't got any credentials and that I wasn't worthy of being able to say to people, my truth over 30 odd years of experience and 22 years of suffering and having helped hundreds of thousands of people. I had no right to talk about OCD, but he had, and it was just like, he's got tens of thousands of followers listening. Oh, yeah, you're so wonderful in what you say. What? That he can't be cured, that you can't, that he suffers still, but he's trying to guide you to what? Ultimately, a life full of OCD. Come on. Don't
Well,
ask
it's,
for my
yeah,
credentials.
I know. And it literally is that moving of the goalposts that has led us to this point where we're having to convince people. We're having to convince people that they can, that it's better to be cured than not cured, which is just wild, isn't it? We're actually having to convince people that no, getting rid of it entirely is a much better life than learning to manage or cope with it.
Yeah.
And by the way, the whole coping with it, yes, okay, if you learn to cope with it, you might go through periods of life where you go, oh, I've got this under control. But but if you're living your life like that, it's only a matter of time before it snowballs.
Yeah,
And then
totally.
actually you find yourself in a position where not only are you feeling like, you go back to the worst state that you were in, but you actually get worse because it just keeps on snowballing.
Totally.
So actually, until you entirely eradicate it, yes, you might be able to manage it to an extent, but it's gonna get harder and harder and harder and harder and harder.
And it can morph, Sam. It can go from,
Yes.
panic disorder and agoraphobia suddenly becomes emetophobia and health anxiety and eating
Of course
disorders.
it does.
It can do that. Will it do that? In the majority of cases, there will be fluctuations, not necessarily from one major disorder to another. It did with me, in fairness, though, over
It
the
did with
years.
me as well, yeah.
Yeah,
Did with me.
exactly. So it can, but it can only do that if you don't understand it. Once you have the knowledge, you disempower it. You take away its core ability to, to morph into other forms of obsessive compulsive thoughts and behaviors. But until you know what it is, you can't do that. You can't control it. I'll tell you something that just struck me when you were talking as well.
Yeah.
The thing is with anxiety, by its very nature, it is disordered fear. Therefore, it's going to give rise to risk assessments. If that risk assessment is recovery, yeah, you've got a whole. I think this is where the source of this is. If you think about it, when you are anxious, you were disabled.
Yes.
And I mean that in the kindest, most, the correct way. In that your fear disabled you from doing what you'd normally do in life and acting responsibly and normally. So
Yes.
you weren't acting in right mind. But moreover, and this is the important point, is that when you have an anxiety condition, you are obsessive and compulsive. Fact. Because all anxiety is OCD. So what you tend to do is protect yourself within the boundaries that your anxiety gives you so that you don't have to take on what appears to be greater threat. And when you're inside of that bubble, as horrific as it is, the greatest threats are, one, death, obviously, because everybody, with anxiety thinks, well, what if I die? What if I pass out? What if I, whatever it is. So that's a major concern, but probably not imminent. So it's an inappropriate threat. But the greatest real threat, albeit within the anxiety condition, is that what if I recover, or what if I get better, start to get better, and the responsibilities that other people expect me to take on because I'm getting better, and the responsibilities I should have as an adult or as a child, education, work, paying bills, driving the car. What if that itself is the threat? And what if I recover and have to take all that back on and I get worse as a result of it? Oh,
Mm,
it's better to stay inside my little pod of anxiety.
mm,
And so that there is a legitimate thing of, is it better to be like I am than recovered? And I think that's where all this comes from. The ultimate risk is I don't know what's waiting for me
yes.
outside of this cave I've locked myself in. So
Yes.
it's safer to stay in the cave.
Yeah.
Do you see what I mean?
Oh, absolutely. And well, we did it. We did an episode, didn't we? The why are people choosing to be anxious? And I think
Yeah,
one of the
exactly.
main points we made is that. And again, actually, we put a clip out on Instagram, and we were both talking about how people risk assess recovery for exactly the reasons you've just said, because
Yeah.
it's fear of the unknown. Well, it's a perception of fear of the unknown. That's the irony, isn't it? It's
That's
not even
right. Yeah,
about that in the first place.
absolutely.
But it's the perception of fear of the unknown, and it's that feeling of like you just said. Well, what if I have to take on this, and what if I have to take on that, and what if this, and what if that? But by that very metric, what I've just said, it always starts with a what if. So it's brain BS. But there was someone on Instagram who came. Oh well, no, that's not why. That's not why I haven't done your various method. It's because this, and then kind of went on to list all of these things, and it kind of was like, yeah, so you're just making my point. You're
Yeah,
risk assessing.
exactly. Yeah,
you're
absolutely
listing
right.
all of these potential risks, and we're sitting here saying, well, no, don't risk assess. There's there's no need to risk assess these things. Oh no, that's not why I'm feeling this about this. It's because of this and this, and what if this, and what if this, and what if this.
The
Right, so
funny
you're
thing is
risk
that
assessing.
when I'm in front of people, like, for example, at retreats or at workshops or whatever, I reiterate this. I say, but that's a risk assessment. It might
Yes.
not start with what if, but it's still a risk assessment.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
and eventually I don't have to say anything. It's quite funny because people used to watch me and somebody would be batting back this kind of argument of, yeah, but. And eventually they realized that they were just risk assessing using different words. So all I'd need to
Yeah.
do is raise my eyebrow. So I just used to look at them and go, and they knew that meant I've just done another risk assessment, haven't I? And
Yeah.
it was just a barrage of risk assessments to legitimize anything they were feeling. But when you're anxious, of course you do that. But the problem is, it's when, getting back to the point of this podcast, which, I
Yeah.
think is really pertinent, is that, facts are written in stone. I mean, I
Yes.
had an argument with ChatGPT recently about this. It tried to argue that facts aren't written in stone, that they can change. They can't, because if they change, it means they haven't reached fact yet.
Yes.
They're still
It's still
theory.
an opinion.
Yeah, an opinion, a theory, a work in progress, but they're not a
Yeah.
destination until they are written in the stone of fact. And there are a lot of things that people can argue. There's strange things that I've heard people argue about colours and about numbers and about maths and the fact that, 2 + 2 doesn't have to equal 4. It can equal other numbers. It depends on your. Genuinely, I've heard this conversation that it depends on where you grew up and your social status, your ethnicity. You know, no, it really doesn't. 2 plus 2 always equals 4. It doesn't matter what color or shape or size you are. And
Yeah.
this kind of lunacy that's seeped into society where people have to debate this bullshit.
But what do you think what is it serving? What is it is it pure do you think it's purely just people trying to make life more tolerable?
No, I think it's placating people who either know that they are completely consumed by inability to function,
Mm.
to actually survive. And I mean, I know so many, Sam, that literally couldn't put a plug on the end of a wire or change a tire or put a shelf up. People that literally don't have any attributes or haven't been provided with the learning process to have attributes that would be of any use at all. I mean, I think it's being done purposely. I think there are a lot of people who are physically weak, mentally weak, and by definition, therefore anxious. But they've been born that way almost now. It's almost epigenetic in it, or genetic and epigenetic, because I think people are being born without the ability to tolerate true life, real, that what it means to be a human and to strive and to be effective. But I also think once after they're born, once the genetics have done their part to create the person, I think there's an epigenetic part to it as well, where certainly in schools they are being taught stuff that just isn't true or fact based at all. Complete nonsense, and they're being supported in the nonsense by saying, "Well, if you think that, then we need you to get you to this person because this person will support you in your belief." And I mean, a
Mm.
long time ago, the biggest subject matter in this kind of field, of course, was religion,
Mm.
because religion was the only thing really in general society up to perhaps 100 years ago that people would have to deal with that gave them any doubt outside of what they could see and feel. But because of social evolution, people have become, you know, um, well, I suppose, less able of dealing with capable of dealing with the truth. That you're born, you eat, you sleep, you procreate, and then you die. And it's sometimes it's a hard fact to, but the point is that doesn't mean that you can't be entirely happy and free of fear about any aspect of that, because I am now.
Yep.
And you don't
And me
have to
too.
go into the future feeling vulnerable as a human because of the fact of being human and what that
Mm.
means actually. So if you start modifying what you believe and you suddenly, I don't know, want to live life as a cat because it seems easier to be fed, and to walk around on your hands and knees and use a litter tray, which of course, for a cat is perfectly normal, but for somebody else would mean that they can't cope as a human. Yeah, it says to me that we've got a serious problem in society.
Well, I think, and the fact that we're continuing to facilitate it, and what the greatest irony of all of this, and the whole, and again tying it with the facts versus feelings, is that we've become so concerned with feelings that we've abandoned reason and
Mm,
logic and
totally.
rationality. We've abandoned facts because we're
Yes.
trying to take care of people's feelings so much.
Yeah, but are we? I mean,
Well,
the trouble is, whose agenda is it serving here? When a young
yeah.
person says, "I'm not sure whether I'm a boy or a girl," and they go to an adult who should be able to guide them to get to the point where they reach fact, but instead of
Mm,
reaching fact, they're guided towards whatever it is they feel and think at the time, and then they
mm,
end up, in 10 years' time, regretting decisions they've made and trying to turn back, which is
mm,
happening in an awful lot in so many, whether it's your career or your sexuality or your gender or your belief about life in general, or, if it's
mm,
political, whether it's about Israel and Palestine or Trump and Starmer, or, we're being people, not we, I'm not, are being manipulated to go down the path of least resistance, to be socially acceptable to the people that they're around, rather than to be correct in the world. And it's so dangerous. It really is. It's
Well,
pulling the world
yeah,
apart.
and it's dangerous when I think it's most dangerous as well when you're seeing it in kids and the generation who are coming up now,
Mm,
and we're seeing this surge of anxiety in kids,
mm,
and we're seeing this surge of confusion and misinformation
yeah,
flying around the internet. Because going back to that original point of recovery is what you make of it, a kid going online and looking at that,
yeah.
it's, you know, that what's the limit? I'd love to ask that person, okay, so what's the metric of it then? How do you measure recovery then? What's the percentage? When are we allowed to say I'm recovered?
Yes,
Because if you're
that's right.
saying recovery is what you make of it, it could be anything. That you're opening the door for absolutely any slight improvement, even temporary. Oh, I felt better today, so therefore I'm recovered today.
Yeah, but like I said, I mean, we've discussed CBT an awful lot, and I mean, it nearly ruined my life.
Well, likewise.
Cost me a bloody fortune as well. I mean, it wasn't just
Well,
the
and that as
financial
well.
thing, but I mean, the nonsense that I was that I had to confront because of them pulling out all of this negative, negative, all these negative thoughts and beliefs. But I mean, even in CBT, I mean, like I say, all of these treatment models are evidence based, and then you look behind the evidence, and there isn't any actual evidence, and the words used to describe them are false. They're false. It's falsified. It's not real, and
Mm,
the expectations aren't real. The marketing isn't real. So the problem is that everything is so like that now, and you're pushed towards believing that your only value in life comes from likes and comes from how people perceive you to look or to be. Young women and young men are going on, Instagram and TikTok and using filters that entirely take away their how they really look and even sound sometimes, and ultimately they're presenting themselves to the world like that. They are having responses from the world based on what they see, and then they walk out of the front door and have a completely different response from people, and don't understand why. They don't understand why people don't see this absolutely drop dead gorgeous, thin, beautiful, big lipped,
yes,
cow eyelashed thing that appears on
yes,
TikTok, and when they walk out the door, people just don't respond in the same way, and they don't know why. So it's almost like a kind of it's like schizophrenia by proxy. It's like dual personality by proxy. They're
yeah,
two people in one, and in one place they are upheld as this queen of beauty and excellence, and then the reality is that going into the workplace or going into school or university gives rise to completely different responses. So one's fact, one's fiction, but a lot of them truly believe that they are the fiction. Crazy.
it is crazy. I think it's a nice little segue here. You talked about CBT, and I was telling you earlier that I thought it'd be quite an interesting thing
Yeah,
to
yeah, 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 yeah.
because it has been so long since I sat in a CBT session, I'd kind of probably quite purposefully forgotten the exact structure. So I thought it'd be quite interesting to go on ChatGPT, and I typed in "give me a 6 session structure of CBT," because that is what you're offered with the NHS. You're offered
Yeah,
6 sessions,
yeah.
and I thought it would be quite interesting for us to maybe go through the
And the
breakdown of
assumption, of
those
course, is
sessions.
that the Chat GPT would know this because if it's open
Well, yeah,
source, if it's open to people and people know what, yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
Exactly.
And
So
did
I
it?
thought it's given a proper, really well structured breakdown of the whole thing. Even, what kind of exercises the therapist will prescribe, what homework to do, what a table of what the CBT tool is, and what the purpose for that tool is. It's given me a full breakdown. So I thought it'd be quite fun maybe for us to go through and
Just before you
break it
do,
down.
though, do you remember
Go
what I
on.
said the other day when I looked at efficacy data for CBT, and I found that
Yes.
one of the biggest first trials I found, included other things. So it
Yes.
wasn't testing CBT; it was like testing cough mixture to see how well it did at controlling somebody's cough, but also giving them a bit of paracetamol, a bit of aspirin, a bit of ibuprofen, and some Vic, but the data is based on the efficacy of the one thing. And I mean, when I looked at it, I said, this can't be true. It can't be that what they're doing is sliding in other things just to just to push CBT towards efficacy in order to, but they're not going to mention those. They'll be sidelines. Oh, this is a CBT test, but we're also using this. It was just mental. But I looked at all of them that I could find online, and they all included other things to bring fear levels down, mindfulness and, other forms of meditation and medication, EMDR, EFT. You mentioned it. They were slipping it in there, which is what they do in therapy sessions. So you're not getting CBT.
Well, yeah,
anyway.
We put a post out online, sort of comparing the financial cost between us and your typical therapist who might do CBT or MDR or EFT, whatever it is. And I mean, the comparison is quite shocking. Up to 160 quid per hour. You think if someone's going per week, once a week, 160 quid a week, it's just. It doesn't even. It's horrendous. But you go on these websites for these private therapists, and because that's the thing, people go, "Well, you don't have to go private. Go on the NHS." Well, no, you're only offered 6 sessions from the NHS
in 18 months' time.
Exactly, when you've been on this huge waiting list because apparently they're so overwhelmed.
Bullshit.
And you finish your 6 sessions, and do you feel better? No, absolutely not. And they know that full well, and so of course you then move on to the private system. And you go on these private websites and you look and it without fail, Charles, every single one that I researched, and I spent quite a bit of time on it because I wanted to be thorough, and every single one that I found is always there's always a little disclaimer on the kind of the about page or, "Oh, this is how I work" page. And it was a little disclaimer saying, this is no guarantee that CBT will be the only therapy that you will require, and many clients we find actually benefit from then moving on to another therapy. So it's kind of like, so you're just happy to pass people from pillar to post. You've got absolutely no moral compass, that you're very happy to just go, "Oh, we're going to charge you 160 quid per session," and it'll say something like, "Most clients have between 8 and 22 sessions," or something weirdly specific like that. And of course, they're going to be leaning towards the 22 sessions. Let's be honest, at 160 quid per session, they're leaning towards the bigger number. But you're then very happy to say, "But you can't expect to be cured after that. You're probably going to have to move on to another therapy, or you're going to need another type of therapy, and you're going to have to probably spend another 160 quid a week on someone else, on some other schmuck who's probably going to deliver the exact same message of, well, this therapy might work, but you're probably going to need another one to go alongside it." And
when you went to private, did your first session include a budget discussion? Either with you or somebody else, because mine did.
You know what? I can't even remember. It's so long
mine
ago.
Did.
I can't remember.
Mine did. I had 3. I went to 3 CBT practitioners, and all 3 from the start established how much money I got. That's genuine, honestly. That was the first thing that we talked about. Are you going to be able to afford this? Well, how much is it going to cost me? Well, we don't know yet. And of course, and the other thing that was present at all 3 final sessions with the CBT practitioners was the discussion about me being therapy resistant.
Yes.
They're disgraceful. I don't want to even. I mean, tell me what the 6 sessions are, Sam, because I've tried to forget them. So it'll be nice to be able to discuss these.
Yeah. Okay. So here we go. Session 1, which is then subtitled "Assessment and Formulation." So this is what session 1 is all about. So these are the bullet points: understand the problem and map out the cycle maintaining it. Here's the one: discuss triggers, thoughts, feelings, behaviors, and physical symptoms. And then this is the one that really just immediately, third bullet point into this list, I went, "Oh, well, this is bullshit, isn't it?" Create a CBT formulation, which is situation leads to thought, leads to feeling, leads to behavior, leads to consequence.
And where did they go to school, these people, I wonder?
I mean, that's just a pure...
It's fabrication.
You've kind of just outright just admitted that you have absolutely no clue about the roadmap of fear, of how it plays out.
But all of
Thought
that says to me, they haven't got a
I mean,
clue.
all of it, yeah. And then it says typical exercises that they'll do to address all of that stuff is a mood diary,
Oh,
trigger tracking, and thought monitoring.
yeah. How to perpetuate your fear disorder in one session.
101.
You've come for a cure. I've told you what it's going to cost, or what somebody else is paying me to treat you. Probably the taxpayer. And so this first session is about establishing the fact that you'll never be anxiety free if you keep listening to me, and therefore you'll have to keep paying me. So it won't be the 6 sessions we discussed; it will be the 22, because I'll make it so.
Absolutely, we'll drag this out for as long as possible, and then
Shocking.
I'll pass you on to my mate who does hypnosis.
Yeah.
In the next office, and then he'll pass you on to his mate who does EMDR, and then so on and so on and so on.
Next pseudoscientist.
Absolutely.
I mean, the thing is, Sam, when you're reading those out to me, I mean, it's very easy for us to poke holes in it or ridicule it or whatever, but this is something that harms people. This is no laughing matter. Yeah, it's funny when you hear it, but the problem is I have helped, and you have helped very many people. Let's not put a number on it, over very many years cumulatively. And, if you bring Ben and Beth and the entire Kathy, Jackie, the entire team into it, we're talking hundreds of years probably of experience helping people with anxiety. And the thing that sticks in my craw is that this session 1 has no bearing on the science of fear and fear disorder, therefore anxiety, phobias, obsessions, and compulsion. That if these people don't have any clue and haven't got any clue through their training what the physiology of fear is, how these things are created, how they're activated, what perpetuates them, which organs or physical portions of the body are implicated. They couldn't tell you what a panic attack is. They couldn't tell you why your ears are ringing, or why your eyes feel starey, or why your mouth's dry, or why your heart's racing. They always come back to the same thing: because you're anxious. Oh, that's pissing useful, isn't it? Thank you very much. Great.
It's a circular definition, isn't it?
Why have I got a lump in my throat? Because you're anxious. Why have I got dry eyes? Because you're anxious. I keep telling you this. Why don't you listen to me? But, if somebody says that to me, I tell them the exact physiological response, where it came from, where it belongs in human evolution, why it's still happening, and what part of the fear response mechanism activates it. That's what these people need. Not some idiot deciding how much they've got to spend and then telling you that you can think your way out of anxiety. It's lunacy.
Well, that's the first thing. For the very fact that they go, oh, the formulation is situation, thought, feeling, behavior, consequence. Thought doesn't come before, and they put feeling as fear. So they're saying that fear is a fear. So meaning the autonomic response of fear comes after thought.
Yeah,
no, it doesn't.
Lunacy.
That's complete stupidity.
Well, if it did, you'd be eaten. If it did, you'd be hit by the bus.
Exactly, you'd have crashed your car into the kid because you would have been sat there going, "Oh, there's a kid in front of my car. Maybe I should."
What am I meant to do? Yeah, but this comes back to exactly what you were saying before. About fact and fiction. The problem is that it's devoid of fact. So how can it help? And if you put this into Chat GPT and say, "Look, this doesn't follow the science of fear." If you give it the correct information, I've done it today. It says, "No, you're right. No, you're absolutely right. CBT can't work, won't work, hasn't worked. So in that case, could you just give me an indication as to why it's provided?" Well, because it's a treatment. Okay, so standing on one leg and whistling Dixie then, surely. Because if you can be that abstract about it, you might as well just go the whole hog.
Yeah.
Get them dressing as a clown and laughing all day. That might help.
Might as well do anything.
That's a treatment.
Hug a tree and run
Light
around
a fire
a field
and
naked,
yeah.
chanting.
It's lunacy that anything becomes acceptable if they say it's acceptable. But it's disgusting, Sam. It is. It's hurting people.
And all this stuff about, mood diaries and tracking your triggers monitoring your thoughts. You're just forcing people to focus on the very thing that is keeping that fire burning.
Of course.
You're essentially saying to people every day, put your hand in the middle of that fire every single day. That's all you're doing. Mood diary. Oh, and what is that achieving? What's the achievement? Oh, I've now realized that sometimes, I'm going to rate my mood. Oh, I'm at a 10 today. Oh, I'm at a 7 tomorrow. Or I'm a 6. Yeah.
But what's mood got to do with fear?
Exactly.
When was your happiness ever associated? I mean, a lot of people say to me, I do relaxation to get rid of my anxiety. Okay, when was relaxation ever the opposite of fear? It never has been. I take antidepressants. Well, when was sadness ever the opposite of fear? Or if you try to alter your serotonin levels to induce happiness, how is happiness going to make you any less anxious? You'd just be happy and anxious. If that were the case. But I mean, it doesn't work anyway. But I mean, the point is, why are they pushing us towards happiness and getting us to study our mood when fear isn't an emotion?
Exactly.
Any more than fitness is an emotion.
It's a response. It's an autonomic response. And to say, and this is why the whole thing with CBT, let's challenge the thought. And Charles, I mean, that was just session 1, and look how riled up we got. We've still got 5 more sessions to go through.
Let's go to 2. Does it escalate, or does it? Hopefully, this gets better.
Oh, you bet it does. It does.
Let's go for it then.
That was scratching the surface. Right. So session 2. This is all about psychoeducation and identifying thoughts, because that's helpful.
Oh, super.
Here we go. Bullet point 1. Learn how thoughts affect emotions and behaviors. Well, they don't. Thoughts are just notions. You're not what you think, you're what you do. So,
yeah,
good
totally.
one, CBT. Identify cognitive distortions such as I can never say that word. Catastrophizing and mind reading.
Mind reading?
Yeah, mind reading. Oh, there's a whole list of distortions and it's mind reading. I guess the whole idea of, what if someone is thinking that I'm an idiot? What if someone thinks that I'm stupid? What if someone thinks that I'm uninteresting or boring?
That's not mind reading. That's catastrophizing. That's part of the fear response mechanism. It's risk assessment.
Putting it in a sort of a separate category. It said catastrophizing, mind reading, and fortune telling.
Oh, Lord.
Fortune telling. What the hell are you talking about?
What's next? Cold reading.
Well, exactly.
Yeah, but levitating, maybe.
And then, of course, it goes begin thought records and evidence testing.
Oh, yeah, right.
And the typical exercise.
I remember doing this now.
I remember it all came flooding back to me when I looked at this. Typical exercises: thought records, spotting distortions, and then working on evidence for and against. Exercises surrounding evidence for. So, for example, you send a text message, they don't reply. Well, what if they hate me? Okay, well, what's the evidence for and against that? Well, the evidence for it is they haven't replied. The evidence against it, they're probably just busy. What have you achieved by going down that rabbit hole? What have you achieved?
Well, nothing inside of anxiety.
It's arbitrary information.
Completely, yeah. I mean, not relevant at all to any aspect of being anxious. It's lunacy,
It's not going to stop fear. Fear is if fear could be stopped with a thought, it would be a shit mechanism.
Of course it would. It would make you so vulnerable. Mechanism. It would make you so vulnerable.
Oh, my house is on fire. Yeah, but I don't think it is. Oh, okay, it's fine. You're fine. Just don't go anywhere then.
The mind boggles. I mean, it either shows that they don't have an understanding of the physiology, or alternatively, it's fee-inducing rather than it's for the model. It's for the payment. It can't be. Yeah, it can't be that they truly believe this shit because. Well, it could be. They could be that stupid, but I think it's to fee build. I think it's just to move you through to the next session.
Well, of course it is. Session 3. Cognitive restructuring.
Oh,
that sounds fancy, doesn't it?
Bit of building, like that.
Here we go. Challenge unhelpful automatic thoughts. Again, why are you challenging thoughts? Yeah, if you're worried about your thoughts, by that point it's too late. The response has already happened. You're in the response.
Again, they're talking about the risk assessments, aren't they?
Yeah.
Those are the thoughts they're challenging because they think they're thoughts. Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're not thoughts. They're notions.
Exactly. And challenging them is pointless because your subconscious just reads you challenging them as a further threat.
I mean, what if your thought is, what if I'm a kangaroo? right? How do you challenge that? No, I'm not. I'm a human. I mean, as stupid as it sounds, it's true, because there
But
are
it's true.
people, because we had a discussion before, didn't we, about, about people who think they're something they're not. There are so many
Yeah.
anxious people out there saying, but what if I'm one of those? What if I'm one of these? What if I'm and the thing is, people don't hear the what if, they just hear the kangaroo and the boy or girl or whatever it is they might think that they might be. But what they don't hear is the response that, hearing. What I'm talking about is what they don't understand is that the prefix on every sentence that comes out of that child or adult's mouth is a risk assessment. It's a what if, regardless of whether you
Yeah.
use the words what if or not. It is, and the thing is, that's the bit they're ignoring in favour of. But what are you thinking? Well, I might be a boy. Yeah, but you're a girl. But I might be a boy. Oh, in that case, you need to go over to this department, because this department deals with girls that think they're boys. And then you're in a whole different ball game, because then you go into social services and away from the people that could potentially help you, completely away from them. It's shocking. It's shocking, Sally. It really is. Oh my God!
Yeah.
And we're at number what number are we at now?
This is session 3, and this is cognitive
Jesus
restructuring. This is the restructuring phase. Learn balanced thinking without forced positivity. So again, I think this is the whole thing about for and against. So balance it. Well, they could be. I've sent a text and they haven't replied. It's been 2 hours and they haven't replied. And normally they reply really quickly. Well, maybe they hate me. Yeah, but maybe they're just busy. Yeah, but they could have. But it's just, the problem is, if you just spend all of your time, I used to do it, Charles. I used to do it. I would go down those rabbit holes where you would spend hours trying to rationalize for yourself. Yeah, but they're probably just busy. But the thing is, the more focus you put on it, the more fears that are going to be sent your way, the more what ifs that are going to be pushed your way. So you might even get to a point where you find a peace with yourself and you rationalize and you go, yep, they're probably just busy. Anyway, on with the day. Because you've given it so much focus, I guarantee 30 seconds later, you're going to be hit of it. Yeah, but what if they're not busy and they are ignoring me?
But Sam,
I think stop.
No, of course it's not going to stop, because it's part of your.
You wouldn't serve you for it to stop, as we've discussed. It would be a poor mechanism if it did stop.
You've got what's going on above the surface of the water and what's going on below. To use that thing about the duck. It's all serene and calm on top of the water, and its legs are paddling like hell.
Yes,
exactly. that is actually quite a good metaphor for what's going on inside of your body, because inside of your skin, there's a hell of a lot of processing going on. It's a neurological level, in your physiology in its entirety, in the intersystemic responses. And that's going on without our conscious intervention and without our conscious control to a large extent. There are things we can control, like you said earlier, by doing. For example, you lift more weights with your biceps, they're going to grow. You can do that. You don't sit there and go, biceps grow. Oh, thanks. And
nice,
walk. Yeah, it would. Well, it would be ridiculous, because everybody
a lot of people
around.
try to sell online that you can do that these days.
There's a politician that says he can make somebody's body parts bigger by, anyway, let's not. Yeah. They call him the something whisperer at the moment, which I find quite funny. I think we know who we're talking about. But it amuses me. But the point is, you've got this kind of, you've got the above and the below, and you've got the sociology of life. So you've got everything that happens outside of your body, and your social interactions and all those things that you control outside of what's happening, mostly autonomically inside of your body. But the problem is, the only way to influence those things, or to influence your body, in fact, is to change the things outside your body to a degree. So you can lift heavier weights, you can run more, and that influences your internal mechanisms. But the problem is, this stuff that you've been reading out makes the assumption that all of this stuff that happens in life, the social interaction, the bullying, the human interactions, the ignoring of the phone calls or text messages, all of that stuff is, by manipulating that, you can affect what's going on inside of here. And you can't. And vice versa, that in fact, by manipulating what's going on inside of here in terms of your thoughts and everything else, you can somehow then influence the outside. It's just nonsense. It is literal nonsense, and I don't know where they've got it from, to be quite perfectly honest. I don't know where they found this data that supports their nonsense.
Well, someone's backroomed, and someone who was bored and thought, we need to come up with something.
Clearly.
That'll do.
Clearly.
Here's an exercise, they'll do that. And then it's use structured questioning to test beliefs. Testing beliefs.
I think I'm a
Hey,
kangaroo. How do I test that belief?
I know.
I, again, it is literal nonsense. It's just been dreamed up by a group of people, sat in an office somewhere in some, I don't know. We had the discussion before about the practice guide for psychological care, the DSM. I mean, it's a Bible of. I mean, it's a Bible of nonsense. You open it
It
and
is.
read it, and you look at it and think, who dreamed this crap up? Where did they get this information from? Look, there are limited bits of it. That's especially when it comes to certain diagnoses and certain prescriptions for those diagnoses, where there is science in there, and it is the best choice at this point in time. For
Yes.
example, the use of, I don't know, lithium for bipolar disorder. I
Mm,
know people that have taken lithium. It's kept them very controlled for a very long time. Efficacy can wear off, but I see why it has the advantage of, because its chemical advantage is that it produces a life worth living. You know,
yes.
but most of the stuff in there isn't based on that. It's based on, what do you think this is? Well, I don't know. But, we could say it's this. Will we get away with it? Well, we will, because we're psychologists. So yeah, stick it in. Just stick it in. They'll be
Yeah.
fine with it. That's pretty
Yeah.
much how it feels to me.
Yeah.
It's
I'll
dicing
come
with
back to
people's
that.
lives.
I'll come back to that point. I'm going to read out the next three
Please do.
sessions because you've made me think of something that I think would be interesting to talk about. So session 4, behavioral change. This is the bit that it sends a chill down my spine because I know session 4 is behavioral change, which we all know what it's going to be. It's exposure work. So this is the part of CBT that really gets my back up, because this is the part that I think is so unbelievably, you could argue that the stuff that comes before that, yes, it's dangerous and can be damaging, but it's as far as making people worse, yeah, I'm sure it can, but it's just, at the very worst, it's probably just going to keep people where they are. But I think
Absolutely.
when you get into the realm of exposure work, this is where you're leading into the place of you're going to be making people 100 times worse, and you're leading you could potentially be leading people so far down a rabbit hole that they never come out of it because they're
Correct.
so terrified to try. And this is where we have the problem of people risk assessing the actual thing that works, because they've been led down this exposure route of just exposing themselves to all of these things that are so irrelevant in the first place, that you're just drilling in so much fear that they just go, you know what, I'm not going to try anything else. And they just live and they just accept it, and they just live their lives in this constant cycle and this constant bubble. And
I've
the
seen
whole
it
point of it
thousands of
is,
times. Thousands of times.
well, absolutely. And it's, and the whole point of it says here, reduce avoidance behaviors. It doesn't. Use behavioral activation or exposure exercises depending on the issue. Test feared predictions through behavioral experiments. And so your typical exercises, so I remember doing this, exposure hierarchy. So you list down all of your triggers and then you rate them. Oh, that's a 3, that's a 2, that's a 10. And you go, right, let's start with the 2, and then we'll work our way down the list and get to the 10. Behavioral experiments, and then activity scheduling. But the whole thing, exposure hierarchy, that the irony is, and we've said it a million times on this podcast, it's got nothing to do. You're not afraid of these so-called things that you're exposing. You're not actually
It's not
afraid of
fear.
these things.
No,
It's
it's not
not
fear.
fear. You're not afraid of leaving the house. You're not
No.
afraid of vomit. You're not afraid of eating food. You're not afraid of touching a work surface and contamination. You're not afraid of those things. It's the perception of fear. So exposing yourself to these things in the hope that you might be able to learn that you're safe is complete. There's no logic
You're
to that.
safe. You just don't
You're
feel
safe.
you are.
Exactly.
Yes.
Your subconscious doesn't
Oh,
know.
dear
And by
God.
the way,
Yeah.
your subconscious does not learn that it's safe by exposing yourself to these things.
It really
doesn't learn
doesn't.
it's safe.
It learns the
does
opposite.
It learns the
Absolutely right.
opposite and sends more. So you're not challenging anything.
No.
You're not because then it says, the whole point of it is to realize that you're safe, and therefore you can check off those triggers.
But the thing
But
is,
you
you know
don't
you're
realise
safe
that you're
because you're
safe.
not dead.
Yeah.
You know you're safe because
Exactly.
you're not unconscious. You're not hurt. You know you're safe. It's illogical. This is the
Yeah.
whole thing with anxiety. Anxiety is fake fear,
Mm.
but the trouble is these people
Yeah.
either, like I said earlier, know that this is the case and are manipulating to believe something different so that they can charge you, or don't know it's the case. Now, if they don't know it's the case, they're ignorant and they have no knowledge. So you should be running out of there anyway. But if they do know that this is true and they're still charging you, you should be running out of there anyway. You know,
Yeah.
either way, it's wrong. It just doesn't. It isn't that it doesn't make sense. I can get as frustrated as I like, and so can you. The point is, it does make sense. It's like a lot of things that are happening in the world right now, Sam. Everybody goes, it doesn't make sense. You know, why didn't he resign? Why hasn't he taken responsibility? Well, it makes sense if you know the truth. It
Yeah.
doesn't make sense if you don't. If you
Yes.
know why that person sat there doing and saying what they're doing, you know, it might not make sense to you because you don't have a knowledge of why they're doing it. You know, just because their words are senseless and nonsensical, you know, if somebody's been put there to act a part, it's like that film. I can't remember. Oh, it's Iron Man. Do you remember the film
Yes.
Iron Man where you've
Yeah,
got
it's brilliant.
the actor? What's his name?
Robert
The,
Downey Jr.
yeah, but there's a guy in it who plays the part of the evil villain, who's
Oh,
actually,
oh my God, what's his name? It's completely gone.
and he
He's
plays the
the
part of
Big
the
Lebowski. What's his bloody name? Oh my God, I'm gonna have to Google that. That's
crikey. And
I'm an
he's sat
actor.
like a
That's
guru on a
absolutely
cushion.
unforgivable.
But when he speaks, so he sits there calmly talking like
It's
this.
Jeff Bridges. Jeff Bridges. Jeff Bridges.
Is it Jeff Bridges? I can't remember. No,
Oh
no,
no no
no,
no
no,
no
no,
no!
no,
You're
no.
thinking of Ben Kingsley. Ben
Ben
Kingsley.
Kingsley, that's the one. And he plays the part
Yes.
of the, whatever he is, the, I keep going to
The
say
Mandarin. That's
Mandarin.
it. The
Yeah.
Mandarin. That's it.
So he's the Mandarin.
Brilliant
So,
character.
and he's an actor,
It's
you
an
know,
amazing
that has
character.
been
Yeah.
employed to play the part of an evil villain. So the world thinks that this
Yes.
guy is the, you know, the sort of master planner of this, of the, you know, the sort of taking over of the
And his
world.
name's Jeff or something
And
like that.
yeah, and he actually speaks like that, you know,
It's
and
brilliant.
he,
It's
yeah.
brilliant.
This
It's a
is what we're,
fantastic representation, isn't it? Of
yeah, but this is exactly what I'm
perfect.
saying. This is exactly what I'm saying. You know, the
Yeah.
thing is, you know, by virtue of the fact that somebody stood there with bodyguards that, you know, with guns, we take them seriously and we take them to their word of what they are because we are being shown and told that this person has, you know, has aspirations of world domination. And so
Mhm.
because he's sat on a cushion and with a shaved head and, you know, wearing tie dye and, you know, we're told to believe it, so we do. But we only believe it because people who we trust are telling us to trust it. And the
Yeah.
thing is, the truth is, he's just Bob from Preston or whatever. But and this is what's happening in the world. This is exactly what's happening in the world. You know, we're applying fake accreditation or a fake knowledge and power to people that literally don't have it. And the problem is their agenda isn't necessarily apparent. So, you know, we
Mhm.
can all say, you know, why isn't he resigning? I mean, we're talking about a particular person. Why isn't he
Yeah.
resigning? Everybody expected him to resign, but there was a meeting. We thought he was going to resign. And the fact is, he knows exactly why he's not going to resign.
Mm.
And it's not because he's belligerent and silly and just doesn't really get it. It's because he's being told not to resign. Potentially is what I'm trying to get to, you know?
Yeah.
But we'll never know that truth of why he's being belligerent, why he's not doing the dignified thing, because we haven't got knowledge of the truth of why he's staying there. It could be just because his wife's going to be angry with him if he did resign, but it could be something else, but we just don't know. And this is my point with you know, with psychiatry and psychology as well. You know, they have been put there, they've been given accreditation to give rise to people's trust. And it's misplaced trust because they don't have the ability to treat you. Because if you ask them a question, I had somebody ask me the other day, a psychologist asked me, because I mentioned the amygdala, which isn't massively implicated in all of this. It's not the center of the sort of anxiety recovery universe, but it is certainly something that is involved in the fear response. I actually had a psychologist ask me very, very quietly, could you just tell me what the amygdala is? You know, and this is somebody 25 years into practicing psychotherapy and psychology at a clinical
Mhm.
level, and they don't know the implicated biology. I mean, that says it all to me. And I doubt you could ask, if you asked 100 psychologists to point at the amygdala, you'd probably get this and this and this and this. I I went at the Royal College of no, it wasn't the Royal College. It was in somewhere else. Where was I? I was at an organisation in London, and there were some psychologists I was talking to, and they were peeing me off, to be quite honest. And I just said,
Yeah.
well, where are the adrenal glands? And one woman, quick as lightning, went like this.
Oh my God.
They know it all. And the others were like, not sure where to point. Pointing everywhere, it was like a clock's always right twice a day, so let's do this,
Let's just hope and pray.
Yeah. What? How are you treating people with anxiety and you can't even point at the adrenal glands? Not that it's that important, but it's important in passing when you've got somebody sat in front of you that's experiencing adrenal, production of adrenaline.
I think it's actually quite important because actually, in the first session with we talked about Ben earlier. He was my coach. I used to have really, my biggest was IBS related problems, and actually in the first session he said to me, "Well, you do know your adrenal glands are next, like they're located next to your gut, so actually, it stands to reason."
The
catalyst of it always right. It's happening there.
First thing hit. Yeah.
The first point of attack. And actually, for me, that was actually a hugely disarming thing and made me feel 10 times better. And that was on the consultation call. That wasn't even the first official session. That was the consultation call. And I remember from that point onward, I went, oh God, that makes sense. My God, yeah, great. Because
that's called the power of knowledge.
There you go. So actually, it might seem like, oh, why is that important to know? That could be potentially for someone like myself an incredibly helpful piece of information and incredibly disarming and a first step on the ladder to actual recovery.
How many people did I ask, why have I got a lump in my throat? Genuinely, over the years, I must have asked 16, 20 people, sat in front of me, clinical people that should have had an answer. But why? What does it feel like? Well, when I swallow, it feels like I've got something stuck in my throat. Can you swallow? Yeah, you can swallow. Yeah, I can swallow. Yeah, but it just feels weird. What is it? And the thing is, none of those people could answer the question. Having been to medical school, some of them having gone on then to study psychiatry, obviously a lot of them were CBT practitioners and other mental health practitioners. When somebody asks you, why do I feel like I've got a lump in my throat? That is the most fundamental knowledge you should have. Why am I having panic attacks? Why is my mouth dry? Why do I feel dizzy? Why are my ears ringing? If you don't know this stuff, surely you lose the client at the first hurdle.
That's it, isn't it? Yeah.
But they don't. They genuinely don't.
Well, because they come up with some way of, I remember, I think we talked about this in a previous episode. Oh, well, I need to, I'm gonna think further on that one, or I'm going to consult with what, and it's make it sound like it's I'm going to take that into real consideration, and don't worry, it's very
they have no bloody shame, do they? They really don't.
No, they would never dare say, I actually haven't got a fucking clue, don't know.
Do you know what's interesting though? I don't know whether you ever saw that thing on YouTube. Go and find it. They were going up to psychologists in the street and saying, and just sort of jumping on them, saying, you're not psychologists, they were psychiatrists, saying, in your career, of all ages, you're a psychiatrist, yes. In your career, how many people have you cured? And some of them actually went, and it's like, huh? Yeah, not one of them. In my knowledge, I remember watching it some while ago. Not one of them said, "Oh yes, I've cured a lot of people." Not one. In fact, I personally know very close people that are psychiatrists who will happily sit there and tell you, "Oh, you can't cure these conditions." No. I'm not just talking about anxiety. I'm talking about anything they can. Oh, they can't be cured. No, they can't. They're always going to be unwell. They're always going to be, and most of them have got those conditions they're talking about as well.
We had that online, didn't we? People saying, "Oh, there is no they haven't found a cure for OCD. They haven't found there is no cure. There is no cure."
What planet are they living on?
There is.
I mean, you've known me for a long time.
Yes.
Do I have any OCD traits? I mean, I used to be absolutely. I couldn't function.
No, likewise, couldn't leave the house. Couldn't leave the house. I'd be petrified.
Contamination, I don't give a shit now. I really don't give a shit. This hantavirus thing, everybody's going, well, how do you feel about that, Charles? I go, fine. What do you mean? I'm fine about it.
Yeah.
it is what it is. Just get on with life. I don't
Totally.
walk around
Just
going, oh,
well, exactly. Deal. I always say to people, because people go, well, how are you supposed to? How does it feel to have just normal fear? And I say, well, you deal with the problem that presents itself when it presents itself.
At all other times, you don't know, you don't have a notion that fear is a thing.
Yeah, or
Because
you just
it's not in
don't
your
give
head.
a shit. You just don't give a shit because you're living your life. You're getting on with it. You're not thinking about it. And then when something presents itself, you go, "Oh, I better deal with that," and you deal with it, and then it gets dealt with, and you go, "Right, back to life, back
But
to living,
making
back to
statements like
cracking on."
OCD can't be cured is cruel. It's
It is cruel.
unscientific, and
It's
apart
ignorant.
from that, it's completely ignorant. But the problem is, I think a lot of these people on Instatalk um, uh, say it not because they genuinely believe it, but because it perpetuates them as an authority, as a public figure. So it's ego driven, I think, mostly. These people that
Well,
are
and
attacking
also,
us, that's ego.
like you said, most of these people are actually suffering themselves. So
Mm,
they're giving themselves their own reassurance. I,
totally.
I sent you a thing of this this therapist who had a panic attack in a swimming pool, and she'd made this big post on Instagram, and almost sort of using it as an advert to sell her services. Oh,
I nearly
I
died in
had
a
this.
pool.
I had this panic attack in a swimming pool, and I was surrounded by all these people, and I should have been having a lovely time, and I was on holiday, and it was da 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 da. And then all of a sudden, I had this horrendous panic attack, and I could barely move my legs in the water, and they had to be dragged out. And then when I got onto dry land, I just collapsed in a heap in tears, and went through this big story, and then at the end of it, sort of said, and guys, if you want to know how you can deal with your mental health, just comment this in the comment section, and I'll send you a
Oh, I've
DM.
seen stuff like that, yeah. And
Wow.
thousands of people DM,
What?
yeah,
And of course,
thousands of
people are
people do
going,
it.
"Oh my god, that's amazing! You're amazing! I'm going to get in
I,
touch."
I need to know
Why?
how to nearly not drown in a pool. Well, it's craziness. What possible knowledge could you glean from that?
It's the only I can't think of any other thing in the world where it's actually a selling point to tell people that you're a sufferer. I'm a therapist. I'm a therapist who goes to therapy, and that's a selling point. Apparently, that's actually something they use as an advantage. If I was, if I'm going to therapy and I'm going to someone to try and get rid of my anxiety, and the first thing they say to me is, "Oh, by the way, I'm riddled with anxiety as well."
Mm,
What? Why am I
unbelievable.
going to you? Why am I
Yeah.
going to you then? Because if you're saying, if I'm coming to you to try and get rid of my anxiety and deal with my anxiety, and you're telling me that you've got anxiety, what kind of information are you going to be telling me then?
In all other
What am I
aspects
learning?
of life, you go to people because you can't do what they can do, whether it's fixing your car or
Exactly.
plumbing your pipes or wiring your house. It's because you don't have the ability to do that, or the ability to do it safely, that you ask specialists to do it because
You
they
don't go
can.
for you don't go for piano lessons with someone who doesn't know how to play the piano. Oh, by the way, I don't actually know how to play the piano very well, but I can tell you how to play a C. Great, thanks for that.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
And in the next lesson, I'll try and learn the next
Yeah, I'll
note.
try and learn a D, and then I'll learn
Yeah.
an E. Come
Uh,
on.
let me have a think about that. I need to go
Yeah, let
away
me
and do some
consult with my
research.
colleague about how to play a
Oh, it's
chord.
shocking. And they
Charles,
criticise us. Bloody
I know.
hell.
Oh, I know.
Come on, keep going.
We've still got two more sessions to break down here.
Oh, I'm enjoying this.
Here we go. Session 5: core beliefs and deeper patterns. This is the real psychological stuff. Explore deeper beliefs driving recurring difficulties. Irrelevant. Here we go. Identify long-standing patterns and assumptions, and develop healthier alternative beliefs.
Well, it's just the same as the last sessions. It's just a repetition of the same, really.
But I guess this is kind of where it's diving into. Let's dive into your past now. Let's get
Let's
in the
churn that
garden and
little,
dig up the
yeah,
weeds.
yeah,
Let's dig up the weeds, and
yeah.
let's see if we can make this all relatable back to the relationship with your parents.
And let's get that scab off to make it really bleed whilst we're
Yeah,
at it.
let's
Because that,
really
yeah,
dig the knife in and twist it around and see what we find in there. It's just
honestly.
unbelievable. It's just unbelievable.
I'd forgotten
You
how
know,
stupid it was. Mm.
I think so I think I remember I spoke to a client once, and I said they said yeah, I went to therapy, and they tried to make it out like Well, they said, oh, it's probably the relationship with your father. What was the relationship? Well, it wasn't fantastic. It wasn't brilliant relationship. Oh, well. And I said, and what did that give you? Well, I resented my dad for a little bit. I really
Mm.
resented, and I stopped
I had
spending time with
exactly
my
the same
dad.
experience. Yeah. Yeah. I had
Stopped
exactly the
resenting my
same.
father for a little
Mm.
bit, and I said, "Oh, and is that a good thing?" Well, no, because I do love my dad, and
Mm.
he's never done anything
Mm.
purposefully to hurt me. Yes, okay, when I was growing up, maybe our relationship was a little bit this or a little bit that, and I was like, so what did that achieve then? You just resented your father for no reason. That's what therapy brought you, is it? Fantastic. That's great. That's helpful.
Shocking, isn't it? Shocking.
What? Crazy. And then the
But
final.
but none of,
Go
none
on,
of this
go on.
so far has got any depth. It's all
No, of course it
about,
hasn't.
yeah. It's all the
It's the
same
perception of
basically.
depth, and it's the perception of depth. If we're digging deep, I mean, it's literally called deeper core beliefs and deeper patterns. Let's dig deep into your past, and that will make people think that we're really, or this is
Yeah,
the real
we really
psychological
understand
stuff.
your brain. Yeah,
We're really getting into it now.
I've had people genuinely say to me in their CBT sessions that their therapist has told them that the reason that they've identified that this is genuine, honestly, I've had many
Yeah,
people tell me this, and I'm not talking 10 or 12, I'm talking probably dozens,
a
that
lot of people. Yeah,
the reason that their therapist identified as the core issue was that genuinely, I'm saying it and I'm thinking to myself, people aren't going to believe what I'm about to say. They were told that they must have done something wrong in a past life.
oh my god.
I swear to you, Sam. And I mean, when I first heard it, I mean, mostly at the retreats, I have to say, because people speak more openly there. But at the retreats, when people said it to me, I used to think, it can't be. Surely not.
No,
No, this is taking it too far
that's a
now.
hoax.
Come on.
Yeah.
Because I've heard things like using illicit substances to get people to under hypnosis. I've heard
Yes, we've
that a
talked about
lot.
that. Yeah,
The use of weed and stronger stuff to get and you go, really? I can't imagine. But it actually, yeah,
it
I've been
does.
party to some legal processes about it, so I know it to be true. But this always said to me, no, somebody's got something wrong. But actually, somebody actually recorded their session. They went back and had another session with the CBT practitioner purposely and said, "Do you mind if I record the session?" And they said, "No, no, go ahead." And they sent me the file. And lo and behold, this person actually said, "My belief is that the reason you are the way you are now, your anxiety, comes from the fact that in a past life you're actually an aggressor, and you could have been somebody quite famous in history that was involved in a war or some kind of conflict, or they committed murder, or genuinely, this is what this person was saying on the recording, and I felt like driving round to her house myself and saying, "Love, what are you doing? What are you saying? Are you crazy?
My
Saying
jaw's
this?
dropped. My jaw has dropped,
It's
Charles. That
genuine,
is
Sam, and not one case, not two,
absolutely,
yeah, not even
that is
20."
baffling.
I would guess at dozens, if not into the hundreds of people that have told me this, that their therapist has said that they did something wrong in a past life. One of them was told, and I remember this very clearly, that they were a World War II um, gunner in an airship basically, and they were
Yeah.
the holder of the machine gun, and that they had huge regrets for killing people and seeing them plunged to the earth in their planes. I mean, this is genuine. It beggars belief.
Where have they? I mean, where have they even? I mean, it's not logical, so there's no point of saying where they logically got that from, because there is no logic. But where have they actually pulled that from? What have they done? What
Regression.
questions have they asked?
Regression. They think because in when you're a psychological professional, you have to do continued professional development, CPD, and in the choices for CPD there are many choices, and I think we discussed this recently about one of them being hypnotherapy, as if hypnosis can become a therapy, and in that, from that, some of these people are so weird that they then go on to understand and learn about regression, and regression, they claim, is when you're taken past the point of your birth to your
Mm,
previous life. So if you're taken past the point of your birth to your previous life, when your soul was presumably inside somebody else, and in this case,
yep,
somebody that operates a machine gun in a
was a
plane,
gunner. Yeah.
then those memories are brought through to your present life. Right. this is within psychological practice, by the way.
Yeah. Yeah.
So this is being legitimized by people's accreditations and forced upon people in some cases because I suppose what they do is they sit there and they think, oh, let's have a look at this Sam now. Now, how gullible is this man? And I mean, in hypnosis, they call it suggestibility. Suggestibility is gullibility. It's your ability
Yes.
to take on, believing that this is true when it actually isn't. And it relies on a very strong, human mechanism, mental mechanism that is based on faith. Ultimately, it's about faith. And this is what they rely on. But yeah, regressive therapy, and they bring it into CBT practice, legitimize it, and then set themselves loose on these unsuspecting, poor, anxious people who then believe that they used to be Napoleon Bonaparte or were blown apart and genuinely, I've had people told that they were famous figures in history. Well, how
Good
many
God.
therapists around the world are telling people that they used to be Napoleon or Winston Churchill or Boadicea?
Yeah, how many Churchills have we got walking?
How
the
many
earth right
souls
now?
have been inside those people?
My God.
But this is true, Sam, and this is the point I'm getting to.
That's
It's
quite
just
terrifying, isn't it?
yeah, but it's only as terrifying as it all is, even when it's not
And
about regression.
it proves the point of how moldable someone with anxiety, how when you're in that irrational mindset, how easy it is to manipulate.
When you're
Because
desperate.
if someone sat in front of us and said, "Oh, you were in a previous life, you were Winston Churchill," we'd give them the finger and tell them to piss off out the door.
Of course you would. Of course you would.
But someone who is so wound up in and caught up in anxiety and that level of irrationality, is it just shows how easy it is to manipulate. And like you said, what we were talking about earlier with, people saying, "Oh, it doesn't make sense." When you know the truth, and I feel like we are exposing that truth by telling these stories and by sharing this information, it does suddenly make sense because you go,
Yes.
"Oh God, of course they're," because it's people are so easy to manipulate in that sentence. So of course they're going to manipulate them because it's just going to create this. It's just going to generate money, and they're going to have to keep coming back. And
Let me
it's not
quickly
going to be.
Let me just quickly tell you something, Sam. It's just
on,
come to my
go on.
mind. I went to
Yeah.
a therapy session. It's just literally come back into my mind. I went to see a
Yeah.
CBT practitioner who was actually recommended to me privately through the NHS in Kidderminster. And
Yes.
she lived about 12 miles from Kidderminster, which was a problem in itself because I was agoraphobic. I managed to get myself there. And the first time I went, it was when Beth and I were first together. And she drove us. I remember driving there in her she had a convertible Golf. And I remember pulling up on the drive and sitting there going, shit, I can't go in. I can't go in. I can't go in. I don't know what to do. I'm going to have a panic attack. Anyway, she managed to get me to the door and this woman took over and took me in. And she sat me in the room. She said, would you like a drink? And I said, yeah, I'd love a cup of tea, please. So she went to make the cup of tea. And as she came back into the room, this is no word of a lie. I remember it now. So she went, oh, and froze. And I was like, shit. And you can imagine the adrenaline.
Absolutely.
Because I thought she'd seen something in me that meant I was about to die. I thought she'd looked at me and I was white or she'd looked at me. Yeah, noticed some frailty that was going to lead to my imminent death, So I went straight into fight. What, and started panicking. She said, no, calm down. It's a good thing. It's a good thing. And I said, oh, what is it? She said, I've realized as a healer, I've just walked into the room and before you arrived, I'd been absorbing my healing powers and doing self Reiki and things like this. This wasn't a Reiki practitioner. This was a CBT practitioner, who also practiced the nonsense that is Reiki. And I didn't know this. And she walked into the room and she did this. And I said, well, what's the problem? What's the problem? She said, I've just realized I can't treat you. And I said, why? She said, because you have a stronger healing energy than I do. And you're negating me. You're negating me. Well, her name was a flower. And I'm trying to think what it was. It was like iris or rose or petal or something. And anyway, I remember it distinctly now. And she was wearing this tie-dye thing, and it terrified me so much. I just went, I freaked out and left. And I went out to the car and she chased me and she was going, no, it's a good thing. It's a good thing. Come back. Obviously seeing her money disappearing down the drive. And they said, what's going on? I said, I can't believe this. She's just terrified me. She said, I've got some kind of spirit inside of me. And I was trying to explain what she'd said to me. It was all coming out. And I remember driving back down it was the road from Worcester.
Yes.
the dual carriageway from Worcester towards where we used to live in Kidderminster. And I remember
Mm.
turning to Beth and saying, Beth, I don't know what to do anymore. I'm terrified. And she said, why? I said, well, is there something about me? Is this why I'm suffering? Because there's something inside of me that that is trying to get out, or something that. And she said, no, 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 no. She just recognized that you were a good person. And she was trying to talk me down. But genuinely, that was the response. It was this, as she walked into the room. And now this is
Jesus
a mental health professional
Christ.
in her probably early 60s that had been working in mental health for years. But it just came to me then. I just remembered it now. When you're talking about
Jesus.
your dad, because that's the kind of thing that is to do that is so incredibly dangerous to somebody who feels so vulnerable. It's just awful. But now I remember it. That's exactly how it happened. And this
Jesus
troubled me for weeks, Sam.
Christ.
It troubled me
I'm
for
not
weeks
surprised.
because I felt possessed. Because I didn't know what was going on at the time. I didn't understand what I was and
No.
what anxiety was. And so the
But you don't.
suggestibility was that there was some kind of possession going on. It was
Well,
horrible.
of course. Someone said to me recently, I was explaining the whole thing to them, and they said, yeah, but surely people can see that it's completely irrational to think or feel that. And I said, well, no, but that's the point.
Yeah,
I said,
exactly.
I said, that's the point. They don't.
Hence the
Because
name.
that's hence
Mm.
the name. It's disorder. And it's very easy, and because your reaction is completely right. Yes, that is completely irrational, and it's ludicrous to think that you might die if I think I was saying that was it. I was sharing we were talking about it, and I was saying, God, yeah, I know. I used to have an obsession where I think someone once said, oh well, you should take 20 minutes to eat a meal, and I remember having an obsession. Well, what? So I used to set an alarm on my phone, and
Countdown.
a countdown,
Do-do, do-do.
because I exactly, and I used to have this obsession of, well, what if I only eat my meal in 15 minutes? Am I going to die? Am I going to choke? Digest because I was so wound up in my digestion. Well, what if that's why I've got this digestion, because I'm not taking 20 minutes to eat my food, and I'm only taking 10 minutes, and what if? And this this person said to me, but surely you could have seen that that's just complete lunacy. And I said, no. I
No,
said, no, I couldn't.
it makes
I said, I
sense at the
can
time.
now. I can
Mm,
look back now and go,
mm,
bloody hell.
yeah.
But at the time, that was the most important thing it was right. And I would set my phone, I'd get my phone, I'd go, right, 20-minute timer, boom. And I would sit there in silence as well, because someone had said, oh, you should never have music or anything else playing whilst you're eating your food because it will distract you, and da 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 da. So I would sit in my house in silence, just eating this food, which had been so, calorie tracked to an inch of its life. I knew every single morsel of calorie in that meal. So eating was never a sort of an enjoyable experience. It was just a process. And I would have this time going. 20 minutes is a long old time.
It is.
And these are quite small meals that I was eating because I was terrified of food. So I'm sat there kind of one pea at a time, just waiting for that 20. All right, okay, and here's 19 minutes 30. Right, good. We've hit 20 minutes. I'm fine. And you think, I can look back on that
Been
now
there.
and I can laugh my head off. I can
Mm.
laugh my head off about it and go, that's absolutely ridiculous. And
But Sam,
you
how
know,
many people are in the world at this moment in time, young and old, who are
going
doing
through
it?
that?
Well, they're going through that, and they are 6 stone, 5 stone, 4
Yeah,
stone. They're
and
wasting
terrified.
away
Yeah,
because of this. And, and,
yeah,
and, and because they don't
yeah.
understand the mechanism that's causing it. I mean,
No.
I've been prevented by medical people from helping people with anorexia and bulimia, but mostly anorexia, because they believe that I don't have the clinical knowledge necessary. However, since they went into that hospital, they've dropped 30, 40, 50 pounds,
Jesus.
under the influence of this knowledgeable section of medical care. And the thing is, the parents are going, yeah, but it's not working, it's not working, it's not working. And they're going, yeah, but you've got to stick with the plan, because this is a serious mental health issue, a serious mental illness. And you've got to stick to what it says in the DSM and what we say as mental health professionals. 3 minutes later, it's all over. And I've literally no cases where I have been prevented from talking to these people. And sometimes in facilities where I haven't been prevented from talking to somebody, and that person's been out of hospital in a couple of days. I've helped people with anorexia and bulimia who have been hospitalized for years,
Yeah.
and I
Yeah.
go in, and within 3-4 days they're out. Does it work every time? I don't pretend it does. It doesn't. But what I do is hugely influential, and ultimately, to my knowledge, I've never lost somebody. I've never lost somebody. I've never been party to anybody's recovery and had to go, oh my God, what a shame. I've never had to do that in 650,000 plus cases that I've been party to and that I have knowledge of, I'm not, do I know everybody personally? No, I don't, but I've never had that report come back to me
No.
ever. But in the
No.
ones I've been involved in, the person has, oh God, yeah, that makes so much sense. And they start eating
Yes.
again. And sometimes
Yes.
it's so easy. It's so
Yeah.
easy.
Yeah. It was fairly easy for me, to be honest, mate. It took a little bit of time, but it wasn't, it was a hell of a lot easier than doing this shit that we've been reading out.
Somebody asked me yesterday about Lewis Capaldi, interestingly, and about,
Really? Yeah.
about his Tourette's, and said to me,
Yeah.
well, he's got horrible anxiety and Tourette's, and I said yes, but they're not separate, and what do you mean? Tourette's isn't related to anxiety, really?
Yeah.
Show me how that works. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
unbelievable, the misinformation, and it's either a control mechanism or it's ignorance or it's a mixture of the two. But ultimately, people are being harmed by it, and that makes me sick. It makes me sick.
Should we
Go
read
on.
out the final session? This is
I'm
the
looking
final.
forward to this one. Is this
And
the
this
one where
one
you're told that you're therapy resistant?
Well, this is the one where I go. This is the irony. So this one is relapse prevention and future planning. Relapse prevention, but you haven't. You haven't lapsed.
Well, you have, but you can't relapse what you haven't lapsed.
Can't relapse.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. You
it's
haven't
a nonsense.
progressed. You haven't improved. So how can you go back to?
It's like doing a session at the end that says, "Now you're recovered. This is where you have to." It's just like, well, you're making a big assumption here. Yeah, I mean, actually on the NHS website this morning when I was reading up about CBT, there are 3 bullet points after where it describes what CBT is that says, after you've finished your sessions, you will have to continue putting the process in place.
Yeah.
Okay. No, you won't. But I mean, why would you? It didn't work in the 6 sessions. Why would it work in another 6 or another 10 or by practicing the thing that hasn't worked?
This is what this says. It's, review progress and identify warning signs. So what? All of life, basically.
What does it mean by warning signs? What does it?
Well, I think it's another word for triggers. Identify or identify when you identify warning signs of relapse. It's coming back. It's coming back. It's coming back. But you haven't got rid of those in the first place. So you're basically saying identify all of life.
Yeah.
Because as we know with anxiety sufferers, everything is a risk assessment.
It's horribly nonsensical, isn't it? All of this.
Completely nonsensical. And then it's create a future coping plan. Right, so coping plan, so coping, so that's not recovery.
Oh, so at least they're admitting in the last session that you haven't recovered and that you know better because you still have to cope. Why would you have to cope if there's nothing wrong?
They don't want you to relapse.
No.
But coping is discuss maintenance strategies. Again, maintenance strategies and future support. And the typical exercises associated are relapse prevention plan, a relapse prevention plan, coping strategies and self-therapy tools. And then it lists, this is where it gives me the little table of tools. So I'll read this out. So it gives me the tool that they use and the purpose for why they use that tool. So the first one is thought records. And the purpose for it is challenge distorted thinking, mood diaries, which is to track emotional patterns, exposure exercises, which is to reduce avoidance and anxiety. It doesn't. Behavioral activation, which is to improve mood through action. Cognitive restructuring, which is to develop balanced thinking. And finally, activity scheduling, which is building routine and engagement.
There are some in there that have a practical application.
There's a couple in there that I agree with.
Yeah, that would give rise to better mood and to a change that would or could potentially evoke some kind of change in your mood, because doing changes mood.
Activity scheduling, I agree with.
Yeah.
Completely.
Yeah, because I mean, without structure, you have no purpose, and without purpose, you have no goals, and without goals, you have no. It's a kind of a circular thing, really. So Yeah, there are things in there that would be practically usable. But the problem is, it's the way that they're being centered on particular assumptions, and those assumptions aren't
Yes.
science-based assumptions. And it
And they're
talks about using
buried.
tools. Why would you
Yeah,
need tools?
those good things are buried in amongst absolute dog shit.
Mm,
And so
totally.
people aren't going to get to the building routine and engagement part because they're going to be so stuck on the exposure and the mood diaries and the thought records that they're not going to want to get to that, because they're going to go, I haven't got the energy to get to the activity scheduling. I haven't got the energy. That's one of the biggest things people say to me. Oh, I don't feel like doing anything. I just don't feel like engaging with anything. And I go, well, that's probably because you're spending so much time being forced to ruminate and self-reflect and be mindful that of course you don't want to get to the activity scheduling bit, the actual bit that might do some good, because you're too caught up on, oh, why is my heart doing that, and why am I having this thought, and oh, why is it, and I need to write that down. I need to make sure I rate how I felt today. I was a 9 today. Oh, I was a 7 yesterday. So why am I a 9 today? Oh my God, I'm getting. Oh God,
It's just so horribly misguided, isn't it? It is. It is.
Completely.
And now, having been
boils my blood.
reminded of this, well, this is the problem, you see. But again, some people would look at us having this conversation, maybe even, watching this or listening to this podcast, and they'll be sat there going, why are they trying to destroy the competition? They're not competition.
They're not competition.
Competition is when you identify something that challenges what you do or what you think or what you create. And these things don't challenge us because they are just awful and so counterproductive and so unscientific,
unethical.
Yeah, so they're not competition. I was asked recently, identify your competitors. It was for a business thing I was involved with, helping a group of people, and I was, because they were asking me about what we do, and they said, how would you identify your competitors, Charles? And I said, well, I find it very difficult, because the problem is there's nobody else that does what I do or what we do. So in essence, there are no competitors. And they said, well, yeah, but there are other people that do psychology. I said, yeah, but I don't do psychology. And they said, but there are other people that do coaching. I said, well, I don't do coaching. Well, there are other people that do anxiety. Yes, they do, but we do things differently. So they're not competitors. If I was a plumbing firm, I'd have competitors because we're all mending pipes. But that's not what we're doing. There's no familiarity in any of these practices because everything is so misguided other than what we know works. I had this with ChatGPT this morning. He said, well, the thing is, Charles, ChatGPT and I have conversations. He's not my friend. It, whatever it is, isn't my friend. But
yes.
But I do sometimes like to challenge it. And I did challenge it this morning. And I said, but what we do, because I was trying to get to the point where they said that what we do actually is the on-off switch for fear disorder. So that the only way to do it is this way, not the method or anything like that, but the process contained within the method that we're trying to force to happen is the only way you can switch off inappropriate fear. That's what I wanted it to say. It would not say it. However, it nearly got there because it actually admitted eventually that what we do is around about 98% successful. And so when I got it to this point, I then turned around and I said, okay, let's say it's 98% successful. In fact, let's say it's 10% successful. I put it like this on the prompt. Let's say it's 10% successful. How much more successful is it at 10% than everything else? And do you know what it said? 10%. It said if you are 10% more effective than the next most effective, you are 10% more effective, which means that everything else is 0% effective.
Is 0% effective.
I got it there because I tricked it into believing that the 10% was fair. It's not fair for me to say it's 100% effective. But when I said, look, I'll give you that. Let's say we're only 10% effective, which makes us pretty shit. How much more effective are we than everything else? And it said 10%. It genuinely did. And it looked at EMDR, EFT. It looked at psychotherapy. It looked at absolutely everything on that list, on the NHS step care model, on the the gold standard. So the gold standard is 0% effective,
Is 0%
at recovery. And even if we were only 10% effective, we'd be 10% more effective than the 0. I genuinely did this, Sam. I swear to you. I could print it out and show you.
I can't. Oh, God, it's kind of
Science is
exhausting,
science.
isn't it? Yeah,
And
exactly.
even ChatGPT won't have it, you know.
It's a perfect way to sort of bring us back to that. You know, this is facts versus feelings. You can't argue facts. Facts are facts, and facts don't care about your feelings. Stop trying to, let's stop trying to redefine words to make things more comfortable. Let's stop trying to move the goalposts and manipulate information and manipulate data to fit your agenda. Just because actually, the quicker that you accept that these things are facts, the quicker you're actually going to recover
Damn
and
right.
feel better and move on with your life.
Not just with anxiety, with everything. As soon as you allow facts to rule your life, everything becomes so much easier. It's true. It really is. You know, but people tend not to want to accept it either because other people are going to criticize them for it, or because they have an agenda that requires them to spin this nonsense.
Yeah,
you know, whether it's ego-driven or money.
Agenda.
Yeah, quite. Yeah. Do we have anything to debunk today? By the way,
we do have something to debunk. Our myth to debunk today is anxiety and depression are linked. All right. I mean, let's just say, first of all, it isn't. And putting it very simply, anxiety is high level of activity. It's risk assessing everything. You give a shit about absolutely everything to a point that is so unhelpful that you're giving a shit about things that no one gives a shit about. Depression is the exact opposite. It is low level. You don't give a shit about anything. You don't even care if you've left the door wide open. You don't care if the sink is spewing shit out of it. You don't care if the toilet's overfilled. You don't care. And to say that those two things are linked, to an extent, I get where people make a link for themselves, where they go, well, I feel really burnt out and I feel really low today. That must be depression. No, if you're running at a constant high level of activity, cognitive activity, where you're risk assessing everything and your body is constantly going in between fight or flight, and it's that constant activation and then deactivation, activation, deactivation. Of course it's going to knacker you out. Of course you're going to feel burnt out. You're going to be, your muscles are going to ache. Your brain, you're going to have headache. You're going to have brain fog. Your stomach's going to hurt because of, you're going to have IBS related problems. And that's an exhausting thing because digestion is such a huge process in the body that I don't think people appreciate how much of a
resource
task
hungry
that is, how much resource that takes. It requires calories to digest. You need calories to actually get the digestion working. It's a huge amount of fuel. So of course you're going to be burnt out and you might be bedbound the next day sometimes if you've had a particularly bad day, because it's a knackering thing. It doesn't mean you're depressed. It's a completely opposite thing. And to tell people that anxiety and depression are linked. I had a client say to me, oh, well, I've been told I've got anxiety and depression, and they told me that I needed one particular therapy for anxiety and one particular therapy for depression, and I needed one particular medication for anxiety and one particular medication for depression. And I said, right, I'm going to stop you there. And I said, first of all, you don't need any of those therapies for any of that. And I said, you don't need any medication for any of that because you haven't. Not only will medication or therapy not help with those things, with anxiety, but actually you don't have anxiety and depression you don't have depression in the first place. You've got one thing. Telling people that they've got because people go, oh, well, why does it matter? It does matter, because telling an anxious person that they've got this and that and this and that is horrendous. It's one thing. You have anxiety. You either have anxiety or you have depression. It's not, oh, I've got anxiety today and then depression tomorrow. No, you have anxiety or you have depression. And they're two very, 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 very different things and dealt with in very different ways.
And sometimes they stack other comorbidities as well. So, bipolar disorder, borderline personality disorder, ADHD, autism, they'll stack them up. And
schizophrenia. My friend had a client.
Yeah.
Oh, you got schizophrenia.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. It's mind blowing. But the thing is, you see, they do it for a reason, and they do it to create a sort of thick fog of of belief that you can't break through. Well, if I've got that and I've got that, there's just no chance. But if I've got that as well, so you then make the assumption that you're a lot more sick than you are. And the thing is, come back to the DSM. The problem is these people live by the DSM, and they do that not because they believe those things to be true, but because doing so means that they can keep you in therapy for longer or keep you on medication for longer.
Of course
You're
it
being
does.
you're being farmed, and it's disgusting. I was told all sorts of stuff like that. I mean, I've told you certain things that they have told me, but
Yes.
the thing is, you're absolutely right. Psychophysiologically, from a physiological perspective, it is impossible to be depressed and anxious at the same time, because one is complete lack of response, and the other one is any kind of response, physical or mental, and the other
Over
one is
response. Yeah.
literally hypervigilance. So
Yeah.
how can you
About
possibly
everything.
be both? It's lunacy to suggest it.
I'll give a sort of maybe a good example. I went through when I was suffering anxiety, I went through a breakup, and when we were, it was it was very late at night, and I was very emotionally charged. And I remember running downstairs, and I was in this mood of, oh God, I need a drink, and I remember going to the fridge. And I was thinking, oh, I feel so depressed. I'm so depressed. I'm so depressed. I need a drink. And I remember getting a beer or whatever out the fridge and drinking it. And before before I went back upstairs, I got my phone out and I scanned the barcode and and put it into my calorie tracker for the day.
Yeah,
Proves the
very.
point, doesn't it?
It totally does. Yeah.
If I had depression, I wouldn't
You
give
wouldn't
a
give a shit.
shit.
I've met depressed people, Sam, very many. In fact, my auntie, sadly no longer with us, she did
Yeah.
have clinical depression in the 70s and
Yes.
80s. Um, and when you meet somebody that has true clinical depression, it's called clinical depression for a reason, because it requires, as far as I'm happy to concede, that condition needs medical intervention. It needs
Yeah. Of course it
something
does. It's a
to,
very different thing.
having said that, I also have a very strong belief that action, doing things can be a very
Yes.
effective way of dealing with and alleviating depression, because what
Of
you
course.
do evokes different internal mechanisms to activate different endocrine responses and chemical responses that will give
Of course
rise
it does.
to more pleasure. So doing nothing is the worst thing you can do. But
Of course it is.
having she, I remember visiting her in a facility, and facilities back then weren't what they are today. In fact, I mean, I've been to one actually, in fairness, that
Mm.
terrified me recently or in recent years. But this one was unbelievably depressing in itself. It was like what
Oof.
like you'd see in a horror movie kind of thing. It was just bloody awful, and the noises, and all of the it
Like a
was
One Flew
horrible.
Over the Cuckoo's Nest kind of thing.
Correct, correct.
Yeah,
And the
yeah.
sounds that were coming out, you're thinking, God, you can see why people don't trust these places. But she true clinical depression was that she, just like you said earlier, didn't give a shit. She
Didn't
couldn't
care.
care less. You'd say, "Do you want a drink? Yeah. Do you want to go out? Do you want to go for a walk?" Yeah. She didn't care whether she was dead or alive. She didn't care where she was, what she was doing, whether she ate or
Yeah.
didn't. She
The
didn't
front door
care.
could be wide open.
Yeah,
No, don't care.
not at all. Not. No. But an anxious person is the complete opposite. That, as you've said. So if somebody has actually diagnosed you with anxiety and depression, you need to find
Mm,
somebody else to talk to. That's the
absolutely, you
truth,
do.
because they just don't
Absolutely. It's
understand you. They
red
don't get you.
flag number one.
Totally,
Red
totally.
flag number one right there.
Yeah, horrible. But yeah, I mean that there is nothing else to say on that really. They are not related. They're not physically related. They're not biologically related. And if somebody tells you that that they are, you need to get the hell out of there.
Run away very fast.
Mm,
Do an
totally,
appropriate risk. Do an appropriate risk assessment and get the hell out.
quite, absolutely right. Yeah. But it is just symptomatic of the whole system. And when you go online, I mean, today I proved a point actually that if you go online and put in therapy damaged me, or something that evokes responses from the general public, it's
Yes.
shocking. Across in the general search results, especially on Reddit and places like that, they are literally inundated with people talking about how medication harmed them, how therapy harmed them, and it's but that's not evidence. Apparently that's not evidence, because it hasn't been peer reviewed, or it hasn't been
It's not been clinically
collected
studied.
correctly. So real people aren't data anymore.
No,
D-
real people giving
yeah,
collective anecdotes aren't, we're not
it's
talking
not
about one or two anecdotes here. We're talking about
Thousands.
potentially millions of people,
Yeah.
all sharing the exact same, and it's been going for years. I used to spend my time in those blogs on
Mm,
Reddit and
mm,
all sorts of medical blogs of
mhm.
people saying these things, and like I've said before, that's where I first found someone saying, "Oh, well, it takes 8 years to overcome an eating disorder," and I was battling an eating disorder at the time, and I remember reading that.
You hit
It's
the deck, don't you? It's
of
just
course you
so
do,
disarming, but it's
of course.
misinformation.
Of course
It's
it
so
is,
readily
and it's an
available.
echo chamber. It's an
Of
echo
course it
chamber of
is.
misinformation. It's just
Mm.
bouncing around, and it's people who don't know what the hell's going on, all seeking safety, all looking for reassurance, and not getting it because when you trying to seek reassurance, one anxiety sufferer trying to seek reassurance from another anxiety sufferer, well, that's never going to happen, is it? You're just going to be setting each other off. It's just going to be one thing after the next.
What never surprises me, or always surprises me, but never seems to surprise me because I've become so acclimatized to it now, is what happened
Mm,
this morning. Somebody said something on a post and asked me
mm,
a question. I responded to the question, and then, as quick as lightning, 6 or 8 people responded to me, but didn't respond to me wanting to know where I'd got the information from, or how I'd accumulated so much knowledge, even if they disagree with the knowledge. They
yeah,
immediately went to, well, what qualifications have you got? And then when I pointed them to the Charles Lyndon Institute site so that they could see what would qualify me, not what qualifications I've got, but what would qualify me, they came back and they said, well, you're not accredited, you're not qualified, you have no qualifications, you don't have a right to talk about these conditions. I've spent 33 years since I recovered, 32 years since I recovered, researching, helping,
yeah,
developing, from true science, though, and then seeing the results unfold in front of me. Not just following a precise pattern that I've been taught, on voucher for 17 quid that gives me a certificate in CBT.
I think it was
And then,
9 quid now, isn't it?
is
9 quid
it,
for
is
us.
it, they've
Yeah,
reduced it, yeah?
it's reduced it. Yeah,
So, I
it's a
mean,
sale on.
but the point is, how does any sane mind look at somebody that hasn't got a clue and isn't saying positive things and is
Mm,
suggesting that you'll always suffer, and
mm,
giving them more credence than somebody who's saying, I'm 58, I suffered for 22 years, I've been recovered for over 30 years, I've helped
mm.
650,000 people through the online program alone, and probably millions in terms of, the total reach. And then they turn around and this, like I said before, this, 4-year-old says to me, who do you think you are? Well, I don't think I'm anybody. I know who I am. I don't. And I'm not pretending to be the Messiah. What I am pretending to be, not pretending to be, but what I am doing is giving people the benefit of my experience and saying, look, just try it. And if you try it and it fails, it's failed because you haven't done it correctly. So come back to me and I will personally help you.
Yeah,
What are
we'll
you
coach you
doing,
through it.
pal? What you're doing is spinning misinformation and telling people they can never be cured. So who's the person with the credibility issue here?
Yeah,
Who's got
but
the
again,
integrity?
but this is the fact. It's a nice way to round this off. It's fact. It's always going to be facts versus feelings when it comes to this.
Totally.
And until people put their feelings aside, you know, you're screaming down a well, and it's just
Do you know what, Sam? The other day I had a conversation with a young person. It was really interesting because they were talking about respect being earned. And they
mm,
said, respect is earned. They've heard this somewhere. Respect, you just don't demand respect. Respect is earned. And,
yes,
and I get where they're coming from. That if
yeah,
somebody's disrespectful to you, you shouldn't therefore by default respect them. I get that
mm,
there are some rules in this. However, I said, if you're 18 years old and you're in a room with people who are over your age, regardless of how far over your age they are, but the older they get, the more more meaningful this is,
mm,
regardless of what they do or say, unless they're physically harming you, regardless of what you do or say, you remain respectful. Because one rule that I've always lived by is you respect your elders.
respect
You,
your elders. Yeah,
anybody that's older than you automatically assign respect until they do something pretty high level to remove that respect.
To dismantle that.
But that's the default. It isn't. You lot out there, you're 62, you've run your own business for years, you're driving around in Aston Martin, you're a self-made man, you brought up children, they're all beautiful, they've got fantastic grandchildren, you've got 2 houses, but I'm not going to respect you. Let's start with you earning my respect.
Yeah.
No, that's not the way it works. And this is the problem in society, and this is what you're seeing online. A 58-year-old man that has credence, credibility, and history that is literally being respected by 4-year-olds because they believe they're right, without even giving me the opportunity to prove that I might have something to say, even if they disagree with me. The default point is disrespect from day one. And I've today on Instagram, I've had 2 or 3 people speak to me so disrespectfully. Not that I demand respect, but their starting point is disrespect. And I'm sorry, but you're going to get blocked and deleted if you do that. I'm sorry. That's not how society works.
No.
Well, it does now, and that's the problem.
But again, that the other irony about this whole facts and feelings thing is they don't give a shit about other people's feelings.
No.
It's their feelings.
Mm-hmm.
As long as their feelings are protected and respected,
correct,
then fuck everyone else.
That's right. That's exactly their start point.
They'll demand. You can't treat us like that. You can't say that. You can't. You have to say this. You have to say that. It's just not.
And that
how
is
it
exactly
works.
what you've just said is the foundation for pretty much everything you see nowadays throughout society. We respected the police. Why? Because if we didn't and we were in the street and we were disrespectful, they'd clobber you. They'd kick your ass. We respected. Of course, there were people that didn't. You say, well, what about the punks? That's when you were young. Yeah, okay, they didn't respect the police, but there were a small, tiny minority that were just rebelling against the system. But generally, we respected our doctors and we trusted everything they say. We respected our bank managers and trusted everything they said. We respected the local undertaker and the local butcher. Why? Because they were in positions of perceived authority. Even people that worked in shops, the postmaster at the local post office, you respected him. Why? Because he dealt with your post. So regardless of position, it was the whole of it, all of it was built on respect. Now there's no respect. I heard a kid walk into a shop yesterday, and the bloke said, "Are you going to pay for that?" Because they were walking out with something. "Are you going to pay for that?" And they just turned around and went, "Fuck off, fatty," to this bloke. And I mean, he was like in his mid-50s, nice looking guy, nicely spoken. All he'd said was, "Are you going to nick that out of my shop?" And this piece of crap turned around and spoke to him like that. Well, that's the problem. That is the core problem. You can be and do anything now without consequences, and control has been lost.
God,
it's horrific.
Yeah,
it's horrific. But it's so obvious now across society. So we need to bring back those core values, because I do go to countries where that isn't that way. In a tiny amount it is. But, I go regularly to countries where actually family values, even religious values and respect runs deep still. And you can see it. Why? Because there's no litter, because there's no graffiti, because people aren't shouting each other. There's no drunks on the street puking up in the middle of the night. There's no silliness, misbehavior, shouting, screaming, because they respect and they don't want to be identified as the problem, because it'll go around every member of their environment if they do.
Yeah, of course.
Anyway, we could talk this to death, but yeah, it's the core of all the problems, really.
It is. Well, look, Charles, I think as ever, it's been a really interesting one to dive into, and we've been talking about doing this one for a while, and I'm glad we've done it, because I think it has identified a major issue. I think that people are so just unwilling to accept reality because they're out of fear, and that's the irony. They want to protect themselves. A lot of the time it is. And actually they're protecting themselves from doing something that will actually help them, because it feels easier to shift the goalposts.
Yeah.
And it's not. So
and they just don't realise how easy it is. That's the problem.
Yeah,
isn't it?
Start listening to the facts, and you'll feel a hell of a lot better very, very quickly.
Damn right. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Sam. It's been really good.
Yeah, well, thank you, Charles, and thank you everyone for listening. As ever, please like and subscribe.
Thanks, guys.
Charles.
Thank you.
Take care. Take care.
And you.
Bye, guys.
Cheers.
Thanks for joining us on the Mental Stealth podcast. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share, and we'll see you at the next episode.